Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. On behalf of BioRx, I am delighted to welcome you all to today's special session. As a student-led biology community, BioRx continue to provide a platform for curious minds to explore diverse and fascinating topics in life science, ecology, and conservation. Today's talk is titled Ordinates, the Overlooked Sentinels of Freshwater Health. Ordinates, fishing root dragonflies and damselflies, are not only captivating insects but also bioindicators of freshwater ecosystems. Their diversity and presence help us understand the health of ponds, lakes, rivers, and wetlands, making them silent sentinels on environmental quality. Through this session, we look forward to understanding their ecological significance and their role in biodiversity monitoring and conservation. It is now my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for the evening, Dr. Vivek Chandran A. Dr. Vivek Chandran is currently serving as an assistant professor in the Department of Wildlife Science at Kerala Agricultural University. He has a strong academic and research background in wildlife ecology, biodiversity, and conservation biology. What makes today's session even more special is that he completed his PhD with a focus on ornaments, making him a true expert in the very subject we are about to explore. His research and field experience in studying dragonflies and damselflies, along with their ecological importance in freshwater habitats, makes him the perfect person to lead today's discussion. We are truly honored to have him with us, and I am sure this session will be both insightful and inspiring. Without further delay, let us warmly welcome Dr. Vivek Chandran A to lead this.
Without further ado, we'll just straight away. I'll just share the screen and we'll start the presentation. Right? Yeah. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yes, and it's in full screen now. Okay,
Yes,
let's
yes.
go. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of BioRx for inviting me. I just, Hisan was behind me for past couple of months. It's not that I did not want to come and take classes, but there were a lot of things that I had to do, especially since you guys were having these talks on weekends. Weekends are usually fully busy for me because I'll be traveling around a lot, mostly looking for dragonflies and damselflies. So because that's the only time when I can roam around now. So kindly excuse for the delay. But anyway, thank you for calling me because I never miss out an opportunity to talk about alternates because they are so close to my heart. Not just because I have studied them and I continue to study them, but because I just love them. So with this talk, my prime intention is to share that love and maybe generate blossom that love in some of your hearts. So let's straight away plunge ourselves into the world of alternates. So ordinates the overlooked sentinels of freshwater health. By the end of the talk, you'll get to know why this topic will make sense to you. Okay, there is a little delay in changing the slide. Kindly excuse me. Yeah. So we started the life cycle of ordinates. I know many of you would know that they're freshwater insects by now. But there is a misconception that automates are adults of these insects. At least some of the textbooks even now talk that antlion, whatever we see, digging these small traps for ants in soil, they grow into dragonflies or damselflies, which is not true, of course, because automates, dragonflies, and damselflies they depend on freshwater bodies like ponds, streams, lakes, and other freshwater bodies to complete their life cycles because they lay eggs in water, their larvae grow in water, they molt multiple times, and for the final molt, the final instar larva crawls out of the water and an adult emerges. So that is when an adult is emerging, and they copulate, they oviposit, and then they lay eggs again in water. That is how the life cycle continues. So the freshwater body, like a pond or a stream or a lake, is absolutely necessary for a dragonfly or a damselfly to complete its life cycle, but not for these insects. These are entirely different insects, although they were together classified with ordinates some time ago under the order insect order Neuroptera. That is mostly because of their superficial resemblance, and especially in the case of the wings look almost very identical to the wings of ordinates. But if you look at them closely, both these kind of insects, the antlion as well as owlfly, will have very long antennae, which is missing in the case of ordinates. Ordinates have very short antennae. You can see them only if you hold them very close to your eye. And ordinates are master predators, of course. So this is another misconception. Since they are found in gardens, people have this misconception that they feed on, they may be feeding on nectar. They're like butterflies. So butterflies are the most well-known insects. After that comes dragonflies and damselflies. So people have this habit of associating their the habit of butterflies with the habit of ordinates, but that's not true. They are master predators. They prey on other organisms. Whatever they can overcome, they just catch them and eat them. So that is another thing. And taxonomically speaking, they come under the insect order Ordinata, and they have three subgroups, suborders actually. One is Zygoptera, that is the damselflies. Then the other is Anisoptera, that is dragonflies, and you have something in the middle called Anisozygoptera, which are commonly called the dragon damsels or the damsel dragons. So the major differences between them, technically speaking, is that a dragonfly is an anisoptera. The term anisoptera in Greek means aniso is unequal, so it means unequal wings. So a dragonfly will have unequal wings. Its hind wings will be broader than its forewings. That is a major difference. In the case of damselfly, all the four wings will be of the same size and shape. There are other superficial differences, like the dragonfly is much bigger, it flies much faster, it has a bulkier body, and most of the time its eyes, the large compound eyes, touch each other. But in the case of damselfly, it is a very thin insect, it is very delicate. It Most of the time when it is resting, it will close its wings over its body, and its eyes are the compound eyes are situated on the either side of the head. This is the other group, that is Anisozygoptera. We have only 4 species described, but right now we have only 3 species. Not that one species went extinct, it was clubbed with the Epiophlebia laidlavi. It was synonymized, so it was proved that it is not a separate species. So currently we have only 3 species of these insects. So if you look at this, it's like a mix of dragonfly and a damselfly. So we don't need to bother much about this, because in India we have only 1 species that is also only found in Darjeeling. Now, when we come to ecosystem services, what are ecosystem services? These are services that humankind derives from nature without paying anything. So these include, free fresh water and fresh air to breathe, free food that we get from nature. So these things, we are not paying anything for nature, right? So we are taking this for granted. So even ordinates have some significance, because they serve a lot of ecosystem services to us. They, as predators, as both larvae and adults, they prey on pests, like mosquitoes, flies that bother us. And also they control a lot of insect pests in our agricultural fields. And they are also very important bioindicators. So these are the significance of ordinates. And now we'll discuss why they are good bioindicators. So if you look at a freshwater body, you'll see a lot of organisms there, like frogs maybe, and there will be beetles, aquatic beetles are there. But if you want to study them as bioindicators, that will be very difficult. If you look at the case of frogs, they are very cryptic and very hard to identify, and you have to go at night and see. In the case of aquatic beetles, there will be hundreds of species. So how do we study all of them? But in the case of ordinates, they are very colorful and they can be easily identified. Just like you can identify birds like crow, you can just a pair with a pair of binoculars, you can identify crow, a pigeon, a parakeet. Just like that, you can identify most of the species of ordinates seen in a wetland, and they show only moderate species diversity. In a wetland, you mostly see in Kerala, but it is biodiversity risk. You get a maximum of 50 to 60 species in a wetland. So that is like manageable. You only need to learn these species, and they have short life cycles. So since they have short life cycles, whatever changes that happen in their environment in a short period of time, that will get reflected in their kinds and numbers. And they spend major part of their life underwater. So if there is something wrong with the water quality, that will also affect their numbers. and they respond to human disturbances like pollution and climate change. So the mix of these characteristics make them very good bioindicators. That is why alternates are called bioindicators, because just by studying them, you get to know about the environment, you get to know about the health of the freshwater ecosystem. Now, to take a brief look at the history of ornithology, when the early naturalists started studying orniths in the 16th century, they thought that the larvae and the adults are entirely different organisms. It was this gentleman called Jan Swammerdam. He was a Dutch biologist who, in 1669, found out that they belong to the same animal. That is, the larvae and the larvae. They have aquatic larvae. Ordinance have aquatic larvae, which emerge into terrestrial adults. This was found by this person. And you must be familiar with Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who is credited with inventing the microscope. He is considered the father of microbiology. He had also studied the larvae and embryos of ordinates. And the father of taxonomy, Carl Linnaeus, had actually described a few species like the stream, the stream glory that you see here, Neurobasis sinensis, and the Rhythonis regata, the common picturing. These species were described by the father of lineage. So the next time you see these species, these are very common species. You can see them anywhere. In any stream you go, you will get neurobasis tanensis, especially for streams. Rocky streams, you can find them abundantly. Rhythonis variegata, the common picturing is commonly known as Onathumbi in Malayalam. They can be seen flying around, especially in the month of September, August. So whenever you see them next, you need to think about the Carl Linnaeus, the father of taxonomy, because he's the one who described it. And then came Fabricius, the Dutch zoologist, who is credited with erecting the order Ordinata. So he's the one who took them away from Neuroptera. Neuropteras are the antlions and owl flies. So no, he said no. The Ordinata are different. They're aquatic. They're semi-aquatic organisms. They have other differences. So he put them under a separate category known as order Ordinata. And between 1770 and 73, there was a British entomologist called Drury. He described a lot of new species. And then at the middle of 19th century, we had a French entomologist, Rambourg. He had also described a lot of species. So that is why you have, if you look at the scientific name of many of the species, you'll see Rambouri, Cacanura ramburi. So Rambourg had described these species. And in 1917, Tilliard came up with a book called The Biology of Dragonflies. So this might be a very boring book. This is available online, but I'd recommend, at least for zoology students, this is something that you need to refer. So because it explains the biology of dragonflies in detail, including its physiology, all the internal body parts, everything. All the parts are described in detail. So this is one such book that is available online for free. And it was Celis Longchamps who actually split Ordinata into the two suborders that we know as Anisoptera and Cycloptera, now the dragonflies and dragonflies. Then came Frederick Charles Fraser in the 20th century. So he was a British military officer in India who had published Fauna of British India on Ordinata. So there are 3 volumes. The 3 volumes are still treated as a Bible for Indian ornithologists. There's many species have been described in detail in this book. And then came, after independence, then came Asahina, who had studied ordinates of the western and eastern Himalayas. Then Lefnik had also described a few species. Now, this gentleman, Philip S. Corbett, a British entomologist, his 2 books, I would recommend that you get these books and read them. At least A Biology of Dragonflies, the 1962 version is available online. The behavior and ecology of ordinates are described in so much detail here. When we talk of ordinates, when I started my career in ornithology, I had thought that, okay, we don't know so much about ordinates, but a lot of things are already known. It is richly illustrated in this book with pictures, photographs, and a lot of amazing descriptions. So the biology of dragonflies, if you are able to get it online, it's freely available, the biology of dragonflies, but if you are able to grab the latest version of it called the Dragonflies, Behavior and Ecology of Ordinata, which came out in 1999, that is a very precious book. So I strongly recommend these 3 books to any person who is interested to study the ecology and behavior of ordinates. One is definitely is the biology of dragonflies. It can be a bit boring because it's a very old book. It has a lot of illustrations. It studies the physiology of ordinates. It studies all the internal body parts, how they mate, how they breed, how they behave. And these 2 books too, Biology of Dragonflies and Dragonflies Behavior and Ecology of Ordinata by Philip S. Corbett. And after getting independence, there was a lull in ornithology, but afterwards, new species descriptions were taken up by Zoological Survey of India, which is the government body, and currently these are the labs and organizations studying ornithology. Mostly taxonomic descriptions are still going on, so we still don't know how many species we have. That is a very amazing thing, no? So the so aspiring ornithologists, you still have more species to find in this country. And regarding the developmental and larval studies, we are still lagging behind. We still don't know many of the larvae are still not described. And regarding the behavior, well, we know that a few species migrate. We know about their mating systems, but for a lot of species, we don't know anything about the migration or mating patterns. And ecology, a few work has been done on the effect of urbanization in India, but the countries like South Africa have developed something called the Dragonfly Biotic Index. So by looking at alternates seen in a freshwater habitat, there they come up with an index, and it reflects the quality of the freshwater body. So such studies are lacking in India. So that is another area open to you people. So like any insect, this is the general structure of an ordinate. Whether it's a dragonfly or a damselfly, it will have a head, thorax, and abdomen. Abdomen is like the compartments of a train. It has 10 compartments called 10 segments, of course. And at the tip of the abdomen, you'll see anal appendages or caudal appendages, which are in Malayalam we call it cheruvale. It is used for grabbing the female for mating. So it is well developed only in the males. The anal appendages are well developed only in the males. Okay. And in the males, you can see at the second abdominal segment, there is a bulge, that is a secondary genitalia. We'll see that later on. But anyway, whether it's a dragonfly or a damselfly, these are the body parts, morphologically speaking, these are the parts that attract your attention, first of all. And these are the close-up images of anal appendages of a species of a dragonfly called Acrogompus fresheri. So on the left-hand corner, you have the dorsal view, and the right-hand corner, you have the lateral view. It looks like a claw. So it is used to grasp the female before mating. And this is how it catches the female. And once it is caught, there is something called intra-male sperm translocation. So the sperm is produced in testis located between the 9th and 10th abdominal segment, whereas the mating organ or the penile structure is found in the second abdominal segment, and which are not internally connected. So the ordinate male has to bend its abdomen and transfer the sperm from the 9th and 10th abdominal segment to the second abdominal segment where the mating organ lies. And after which the mating happens, and the eggs are laid in water. So there is some difference in the egg laying pattern too, because in the case of most of the damselflies, it is endophytic oviposition, which means they lay eggs inside water plants. Whereas in the case of dragonflies, it is mostly exophytic. So they place their eggs on the surface of water plants. So dragonflies place their eggs on top of the water plants, whereas in the case of damselflies, these eggs are inserted into the water plants. So that is the difference. And after mating, the male dragonfly or damselfly will keep guarding the female, because otherwise another male may come and hijack the female. So this is a secondary genitalia. There is a second segment that is shown in detail. There is again of the same species called Acrogompus fresheri. So this will be seen only in the male. So they have hemi-metabolic development, which means they do not have a complete life cycle like a butterfly, which will have egg, larva, pupa, and adult. So the pupal stage is not present in alternates because they are ancient insects. And this picture shows the ovipositor of the alternates. On the left-hand side, you have the Gomphidia quadrigensis, that is an anisoptera dragonfly. It's just a plate. Okay, so it places its eggs on top of water plants. But in the case of Zygoptera, there's a damselfly. This species shown here is the Indocycta dacanensis, which is endemic to the Western Ghats. You can see a spine-like structure which is used to make a hole on the water plant into which the eggs are placed. So there is a basic difference in the way dragonflies and damselflies lay eggs. And this picture, the sequence of pictures show how an adult dragonfly emerges from the final instar larva. You can see this happens mostly at night. This is to avoid the predators, because most of the predators are birds. So whenever the birds are less active, that is usually at night, these alternates emerge. And when it comes out, it is known as tendril, because it will not have well-developed colors. It will look like a ghost. It will not have colors. It will be very sticky, very wet. So I recommend that you don't go and catch Tenneral alternates because they're very soft. So it will take some hours for them to the blood to the hemolymph to pump to all the organs and for them to solidify. So this picture also shows that alternates link these three worlds. For laying eggs and the development of larvae, they require freshwater bodies, and for crawling out, they need the terrestrial habitat, and for flying around, they need the atmosphere. So they connect all these three habitats. And as I told you, they are ancient insects. They were present here 300 million years ago. At least the ancestors of modern ordinates were present here 300 million years ago in the Carboniferous period. This is a fossil of a species known as Meganura moni. It was about the size of an eagle. So over time, they have reduced in size. There are two theories proposed why this happened. One is that in earlier times, the amount of quantity of oxygen available in the atmosphere was more, so the insects were able to grow larger, and also there were no predators for them. Over time, species like dinosaurs came and they became their predators, and to escape from these species, they had grown smaller. So these are the two theories. But anyway, automates have seen the dinosaurs come and go. So they're not very simple organisms. They were here before dinosaurs. They're still here. They may still be here even after humans are gone. Even the larvae of automates are voracious predators. Here you can see an autonomate larva is preying on a vertebrate. That's a fish. And the larvae are also different in the case of dragonflies and damselflies. In the case of damselflies, at the tip of their abdomen, you can see some leaf-like appendages. These are external gills used mostly for respiration. And in the case of dragonfly nymphs, these gills are inside. They're rectal gills, so you cannot find them outside. And just like adults, the dragonfly nymphs or larvae are much bulkier in comparison with damselfly nymphs. And adults are also very powerful predators. If you have tried to catch a dragonfly or a damselfly from behind, you would have known how powerful their eyesight or how keen their vision is. Because they have two large compound eyes. Each eye is made up of thousands of lenses, and they detect motion very easily, very fast. But their antennae are less developed, so they have very less sense of smell, and they do not have any other functions. So yeah, they mostly they understand their environment by seeing, just like us. And their legs are very spiny, so these are used for catching the prey, and they have biting and chewing mouth parts using which they just eat their prey alive. And their flight is also very charismatic, because all four wings can be moved separately, so they're very muscular. So the thorax of any ordinate, regardless it being a dragonfly or a damselfly, it is a very muscular. And these muscles are such that each wing can be moved separately. It's not like in birds. Birds and butterflies, they flap their wings together, but in the case of ordinates, the muscle have a different mechanism. The muscular mechanism is such that each wing can be moved separately. That is why a dragonfly is able to fly forward, backward. It can even do somersaults or hover at a place. And some of the dragonflies can even reach speeds up to 50 kilometers per hour. So just imagine, it's a very small organism. It's a small organism, and it is able to reach such speeds. And they disperse. To talk about dispersal, so what a dragonfly or damselfly does is that once it emerges from its larval stage, it just disperses. It just escapes from its natal water body, because that water body is not safe. I told you, if they once they emerge from the final instar larva, they are called Tenneels because they're very soft and they're very vulnerable to predation. So they just escape from there, and that is when you can find many of these species in your background, in your backyards, in your gardens. These disperse and go. And some of the species even migrate. Most of you may be familiar with this. The migration of birds is familiar to everyone, but if I talk about migration of dragonflies, this is proven. So this is a species called Pentala flavescens. It's commonly called globe skimmer. It has almost cosmopolitan distribution, distributed almost and on all corners of the world except for very cold places. So it has a single gene pool. So all these individuals mate among each other. So this is a very common sight in September, October in the South India. Towards north, I think this will be common in June. So they migrate from Africa. This is where they migrate from, and they reach by March, June, they reach the North Indian plains. And with the reversal of monsoon winds, Using the winds, they travel back to South India, they breed here, and the next generation goes to Africa. So for completing this entire migratory circuit, it takes like 4 generations of these dragonflies. And the larvae also are also peculiar because the larval stage is completed within just 1.5 months. So they have a very fast development, and this development usually happens in small puddles formed after monsoon rains. So there is another organisms which breeds in such temporary pools, which is a menace to us. There is the mosquitoes, especially species like Aedes, so which spread a lot of diseases like chikungunya. So these larvae, the larvae of Pentala flavescens, play a very important role in controlling the populations of such insect pests. And also to talk about the thermoregulation, they are cold-blooded animals. Yeah, so they're not like us. So we have an internal temperature, regardless of whatever happens in the environment. But in the case of ordinates, just like all insects, they are cold-blooded. So their body temperature fluctuates according to the external temperature. Whatever is happening in the environment affects them. So early morning, you can see that they bask. That is the first picture that is shown here in oblique posture. Yeah. So you can see that just spreading out its wings and abdomen, so it will just expose itself to the sunlight maximum. But in the case the right hand corner in the same picture, you can see that its abdomen is like tilted perpendicular to the sun. So that is 12 o'clock at noon. So it is exposing a minimum surface area to sun. So that is to minimize the heat stroke. So this is one way of thermoregulation in ordinates. Some of the ordinates, like the small damselflies, they also escape from heat by escaping to the gardens. They just take shelter in the shade. So they show shade-seeking behavior. And there are active flyers like the large ordinates, like anax species, which can actually which are partly endothermic because they are able to generate some heat with the muscular movement. So they are very strong flyers, and when their muscles beat very fast, they are able to generate some heat. That is why they are able to fly during early mornings and late evenings. So these are crepuscular species that are active during early mornings and evenings, which are able to generate their own internal heat. Now, to talk about ordinary diversity, across the world, we have 6,400 species, more than 6,400 species described till date. In India, we have over 200, 500 species, and in Kerala, we have 190 plus species. So, in all these figures, you can see a plus sign because newer species are still being described. Okay, so if you compare the scenario with Great Britain, the country of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, has only 50 species of ordinates. Okay, a panchayat in Kerala will have more than that. So just imagine the diversity is seen here. We have not yet described all the species found in the country. So for that, we need to know what a species is. So there are different concepts in biology. So we mostly go by the biological species concept. They are interbreeding a group of individuals which are able to produce fertile offspring. But there are more modern concepts like the phylogenetic concept, which say that they share a common ancestor. So whatever species the individuals share a common ancestor and have evolved together, so they become a species. Why do we need to conserve a species? We discussed about the ecosystem services provided by nature. All these ecosystem services, like the provision of food, medicine, raw materials, and the soil formation, water filtration and flow, pollination, all these the services are provided actually by the species, individual species. So we need to conserve these species. But then the question comes: do we need to study species? Can we just close away all our forest habitats and freshwater habitats and just keep them aside from people and save them? Is that possible? Is that advisable? That is not advisable because we need to know the ecological interconnections between species. Because in the modern world, no place is completely pristine. So for the traces of dignity have been found even from the tissue of penguins living in the Antarctic. So no place can be called pristine. So we need to understand the interconnections between nature, between the species. So for that, we need to keep studying them. And some of the species may be indicator species like ordinates. So we need to study them. We need to know which are the indicator species. We need to assign them indicator values so that we can monitor the health of the environment. For that, we need to study them. And some of them may be keystone species. Keystone species are the species which, despite having small biomass, are able to support a lot of species. They are able to support a lot of species. They feed a lot of species. They either feed a lot of species or are valuable in some other way to different species. So one example could be the fig tree. So in the forest, Fig trees may be few in number, but when they fruit, they feed a lot of animals. They include elephants, deer, hornbills, a lot of animals. So that is the importance of keystone species. In the case of ordinates, the species that we discussed, the globe skimmer can be considered a keystone species because it feeds a lot of bird species. So once the keystone species is gone, it will affect a lot of other species. That is why to understand what a keystone species is, we need to understand the species and study it. And not all species may be equally threatened. Some of them may be, they may be threatened because of a particular reason. So for prioritizing conservation, we need to understand the species very well. So that is why we need to study the species. And to improve our scientific knowledge, we need to study as much species as possible. That is why we cannot just stop studying species and just we can say, I have heard some of the policymakers say, why do you need to study the species? They are safe in their habitat, let them be. But no, that is not true. We need to keep studying them because of all these reasons. So, and also, even if the species may be looking very similar to each other, their needs, ecological needs may be different. So this example, exemplifies that. This is a species called Phylloneura. I mean, the genus name is Phylloneura. Earlier, we thought that we in the entire Western Ghats we had just one species, that is Phylloneura westermani. But now we know that Phylloneura westermani is seen only in the Nilgiri Hills above the Palakkad Gap in the Western Ghats. So this species lays its eggs on the surface roots of riparian trees, the trees lining the rivers, right? So that is what is shown in the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you can see very similar species that was described only in 2024, Phylloneura rupestris. It is seeing, laying eggs on the moss growing on rocks. It's a wet rock. There is a small stream flowing. There's moss growing over it, but that is where it lays its eggs. So the egg-laying habitat of these two species are entirely different. So the ecological needs of species that looks very similar could be different. So we need to know that for conserving them. Now, each subspecies or each subpopulation could be a distinct species. So earlier, pre-2025, before 2025, we thought there was a species called Protostigma sanguinostigma. It's a very delicate damselfly. It has very small wings and very long abdomen. I'll show you in a while. But we thought this species was distributed throughout the Western Ghats. Even when it was distributed throughout the Western Ghats, it was considered as vulnerable in IUCN classification. Okay, so but now we know in August 2025 that we did a study and we know that its range is much more restricted than we previously thought, because what we thought was species A, that is Protostigma sanguinostigma, is seen again only in the Nilgiri Hills. What we have south of the Palakkad Gap is a different species. That is species B, that is Protostigma sanguinithorax. And what we have in Maharashtra is a different species, that is species C. So, but what we had no idea what we had in Karnataka back then in August 2025, but now we know. So just what I was trying to say is that even when a species was considered to be distributed throughout the Western Ghats, it was considered as vulnerable to extinction. But now we know that its range is even smaller. It's seen only in the Nilgiri Hills. There are other species. This population you can see in this picture. A is the Protostigma sanguinostigma, but B is very different. Its thorax is reddish in color. Sanguinostigma had a black thorax, whereas I don't know how this species missed our attention for so long. So sanguinithorax we described just last year. That is from south of the Palakkad Gap. So species C, there is a Protostigma shambhavi, is in Maharashtra, and we still don't know what all species could be found in Goa and Karnataka. So the importance is that we need to assign new threat categories. So not unlike what we thought earlier, the species A, that is Protostigma sanguinostigma, may not be vulnerable. It may be critically endangered, and the newly discovered species may also be endangered. So IUCN categorization is like that. The priority for conservation action will also be based on that. So that is why we need to study the species, and newer species need to be described. And now, why conserve species? So we know that the species provide us with a lot of, even ordinates, also ordinates provide us a lot of ecosystem services, including pest control services, like ordinates do. But that is not the sole purpose why we need to do that. We need to do conservation, or we need to conserve species. There's a great ecologist called Safina who says that humankind is the only species. Humans are the only species which are able to conserve other species. So it's a moral responsibility upon us to conserve species. So this is an article by him. You can just Google the name Carl Safina and this will pop up. Yeah. And another missing part in the case of studies in Ordinata is about Ordinata larvae. So we know a lot about the dragonflies and damselflies that fly around, but we don't know much about the Ordinata larvae that crawl underwater. So you cannot, if you look at a water body, you can see fish swimming around, but it is not very easy to find an Ordinata larvae because they are ambush predators. They hide themselves. See, this is a very rare picture that was caught by my friend while we were doing field work. Otherwise, it's very difficult to find them in water because they always lay hidden. They're ambush predators. They wait for their prey to come to them and they just suddenly jump and catch them using their extendable labia. So we don't know much about them. We don't know about their larvae. So this was one of my study objectives for my PhD. This is how I collected the larvae. So there is a D-shaped net. So the aquatic net was used for collecting the substrate, disturbing substrate, and collecting the larvae. And I read the larvae indoors, ex situ rearing was done till they emerged. So this was a very difficult thing to do because larvae cannot be grown together. They are very aggressive and they may eat each other. They are also cannibalistic. The same species may eat each other. So this was a very tough task for me. But I ended up describing the larvae of a few species. This is a very rare species, the Platystylis. It has a rather wide distribution. It is distributed in Bengal and almost entire Indian peninsula, I would say. But the larva was unknown. The scientific world did not know what the larva looked like. So when I got a larva, that I was not able to identify. I read it indoors, and when it emerged, I used the exuvia, that is the final shed exoskeleton of the larva, to describe the larva. So that was published in Taxa, and it's a very unique larva. You can see the very long labium here, and this is the place where it was collected from. It's called the clans in Kerala. And next, this is a very common species, Aethermenta brevipilis. It's called the, I don't know what common name is, maybe scarlet skimmer or scarlet guider. So the common name, the problem with the common names of dragonflies is that every single species will have multiple names. So it is very difficult to study the common names. But anyway, this is the scientific name is, I would recommend you to study the scientific names. The scientific name of this species is Aethermenta brevipilis. It can be found in any pond or any water body, any wetland in Kerala, and I'm pretty sure it's common in other parts of the country too. But the species was well known, but its larva was undescribed again. So again, I read it indoors, and when it finally emerged, I used the exuvia to describe the larva. So now, if we get a larva, we know, using this description that we gave, we will be able to say that this larva belongs to the species called Aethermenta brevipilis. But that is not what I intended to study. My intention was to study the ecology of organisms. When they are seen, what is the seasonality shown, what are the physicochemical parameters that affect the distribution. But to study that, initially I had to study the taxonomy because many of the larvae were unknown. So I had to describe the larvae first and then study them. Yeah, so I collected larvae in multiple seasons, and I found that their abundance was more during winter season. Yeah, I'm not getting into the technical details, but if anybody is interested, you can contact me, and even my thesis is available online. You can refer to that. And this is the correlation heat map. So I studied all these physicochemical parameters like vegetation cover, organic carbon content in soil, biochemical oxygen demand, a lot of factors, water quality parameters, soil parameters, and vegetation parameters. And I was trying to see which are the parameters, mostly influencing the Ornata larva distribution in the cold wetlands. So interestingly, I found that the larval diversity and their abundance was more in places that was rich in nitrate and phosphate. So these are high nutrient levels. It's almost eutrophic water. So you can some scientists, when they see eutrophic water bodies, they say it's a polluted water body. So you probably won't find many species there. But these species were at least the common species were thriving in such habitats. That is what I found. That is very confounding, but still it is true. That's what we found. And this is again some technical details. The principal component analysis shows which are the more important parameters. You can see that the pH, the longer the arrow, the more influential the parameter is. So you can see that soil pH and pH are very strongly influencing the distribution of larvae in this habitat. So next, I would like to discuss a project that I did for IUCN. So this is a grant IUCN SOS Foundation Secretary Award. I had won grant, and I had done my fieldwork in Kurwa Islands. And this was the title of my project, understanding the ecology of a species known as Disperanura apicalis. It is known as the black-tipped bamboo tail, depicted here in the left-hand corner. It is seen only in a, very isolated locations. Only two locations are known. One is the Kurwa Islands in Wayanad, the other is in Coorg in Karnataka. And yeah, so the Kurwa Islands is like it's a delta formed by the Kabini River in Wayanad district. It's very difficult to access, although it is a tourist location. In the rainy season, it becomes very difficult to navigate there. Yeah, so this is a species that I studied. So it was also considered as vulnerable because, like I said, it was found only in two locations, and only its taxonomic distribution and its locations were known. Locations of distribution were nothing else was known about the species. And our project had these two objectives: to understand the ecology of the species and to assess the impact of tourism on its habitat. So we had transects there. I did transects, and I walked the same 12 transects during different seasons. And I also monitored the physicochemical parameters. These are the insights from the study. So we found that the species is using the roots of endemic trees for laying the eggs. So this was an insight that came out that the species was Calophyllum calaba. So most of the egg layings were observed in the Calophyllum calaba. So maybe these endemic tree species are very important for this species. That is why they're restricted in the distribution. And of course, a lot of tourists come here, and all the alternate these Disperanura apicalis encounters occurred where the tourists were seen. So it means that the tourism is happening in the prime habitat of these species. Okay, and they were also always they had this association with this species called the Cryptocorin retrospiralis, which looks like a grass, but it is not a grass species. It is a herb. So it actually the species actually prefers these plants for perching. So they are very territorial. So to maintain their territory, they perch on this leaf, as you can see here. And they're seen only in water, streamlets where the water flow is from zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.4 meter per second. So they're not seen in stagnant water bodies, and they're not seen in water bodies where the flow of water is very fast. So they require a moderate flow of water. So that is another requirement for the species. And the potential threat is trampling of its favored perch plants by the tourists. You can see, as I told you, the species prefers this herb, Cryptocorin retrospiralis, for perching and defending its territory. But at least so some 100 tourists visit Kurwa Islands daily. So they have a potential impact on the species because they trample on these plants. And these are some of the results. You can see that the species was missing during the monsoon, and their peak abundance, the peak abundance of Disperanura apicalis was seen in summer. So they were the best time to visit Kurwa Islands in Wayanad to see the species is in summer. That's actually now. So April, May is when you can see the species abundantly here. This study had a lot of challenges. Despite this, we were able to do the study, and we were able to publish the paper on it. So strangely, these species, interestingly, the species Disperanura apicalis shared the habitat with all these species: the tiger, the elephant, and the marsh crocodile, and also a lot of leeches. I was bitten a lot during this study. And there was this challenge too, because as I told you earlier, it was very difficult to navigate the island during the rainy season because it is very risky. The flow is very fast, and there was always a risk of getting washed away. And as part of the study, I was also able to explore the other habitats because I was looking for the species everywhere, but the species was restricted to the Kurwa Islands. But I came across a lot of other interesting species, like many of the endemic species shown here. And also, I ended up describing a new species known as Epithemys wainadensis. So it's a very interesting species because earlier only a single it was considered as a monotypic genus. So only a single species, that is Epithemys mariae, was known from this genus, and it is endemic to the Western Ghats. It is rightly called the jewel of the Western Ghats, but we were fortunate enough to describe a second species, that is Epithemys wainadensis, restricted to the Wayanad plateau. And interestingly, it was celebrated also by the district administration because you can see the district collector of Wayanad is flagging it off as a mascot of election. So it was considered a mascot of the Lok Sabha elections that happened. So we are all very happy because of that. And very recently, it was the species Epithemis wainadensis was also recognized as the district dragonfly of Wayanad. So why research on Odonata is very urgent? So there's a massive decline that is happening in insect populations worldwide. Okay, so and it is also affecting ordnance. So these are the insect species that are getting affected by the insect decline, and you can see ordinates are also there in the list. There has been a 37% decline in ordinata population worldwide. So this is worldwide, but we do not know what is happening to our ordinates because we have not done describing all the species in here. We are still describing new species from India. So there are a lot of reasons that have been speculated behind this, which are speculated to be behind the decline of insects worldwide. One is agricultural intensification. We are using a lot of pesticides and fertilizers which are harmful to all organisms, including ordinates. And there's climate change, there is deforestation, urbanization. A lot of things are happening. So the insects are getting pummeled. They are getting beaten from all the sides. So that is why there is a decline. And there are studies in permanent plots of Germany, places like Germany and Costa Rica that show that there is a decline. But in India, we do not have such studies. But we know from our experience that a person who was driving, that is what is shown in the cartoon here, a person driving his car in 1980 would have found a lot of insects in his windshield. But now we do not see any of them. So this is an anecdotal evidence that the insects are getting declined. So we need to monitor them. We need to study them. We need to describe the species first and then study their ecology. And we have this bias, unfortunately, we have this bias in conservation priorities. So species such as ordinates are never considered as important as tigers or elephants. The megafauna, the charismatic megafauna are always given maximum importance, and all the funding for conservation, everything goes to them. But if you take the case of Wayanad, where I have roamed around a lot, if you ask me, the best place to see large animals like tigers and elephants would be the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. The places familiar to you would be the Muthanya and places like that. But the best forests are found outside the sanctuary in the Wayanad North and South Division, where you get an abundance of species, including ordinates. But they are not getting as much conservation attention as the tiger gets in the Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary. So there is definite bias in conservation priority, which needs to be changed because all the species are important. I'm not saying the tigers are not important, but the scientists are now of the consensus that this umbrella concept, if you protect the top carnivore, this umbrella method of conservation does not work because each species will have its own requirement. So if you're, there was initially some years earlier, there was a thought that if you protect the tiger, all the forests will get, all the forests and all the other organisms will also get conserved, which is not true. So for each species, we need to study them and we need to, delineate what are the ecological factors affecting them and then take steps for their conservation. And these threats still remain. Yeah, we are reclaiming all the wetlands. If you talk to the lay persons around you, they will tell you in their childhood they had seen a lot of alternates, dragonflies flying around. But now we are not able to find them. Why are they not able to find them? Because we are losing all the habitats. All the wetlands are getting filled. The ponds are getting cleaned up. So while cleaning, what people do is they remove all the aquatic vegetation. As I told you earlier, aquatic vegetation is very important for dragonflies and damselflies for laying their eggs. So once the aquatic vegetation is removed, it becomes like a swimming pool. It may look very neat to you, but it is of no use for alternates. It will not support any alternate species. So most of the wetlands are getting filled up. That's a very real threat. And dams are being constructed even in the Western Ghats. So so the water quality changes. As I told you, there are species which require the water to flow. So such species will get isolated. They will go locally extinct. All these problems are happening. And we are also polluting these water bodies, freshwater bodies. We are very much dependent on freshwater body, just like ordinates. Can you imagine a single day without consuming water? We cannot imagine that. But still, we are polluting our water bodies. Our wetlands are treated like waste bins. From the urban areas, all the waste is dumped there, causing water pollution. And we also use a lot of insecticides and pesticides, even banned ones, even banned chemicals are being used. And even prescribed chemicals, we are using them beyond their limits. So that is another threat. And now there is the threat of invasive species. Invasive, if you go to any wetland in India, At least in Kerala, you can see Acornia crassipes everywhere. There is water hyacinth. It causes stagnation of water and causes the reduction in dissolved oxygen, and it causes death of aquatic organisms, including ordinate larvae. And we have newer threats like the alligator gar and other uh, fish species that are exotic. These have been brought to India for cultivating in fish tanks, but with events such as the floods happening, they have escaped into our water bodies and they're causing a lot of trouble for the native organisms, including ordinates. So nobody is studying this. So this is another venue for study. So I recommend that you download these freely available brochures and ebooks. It's available. The websites are shown: ordnatesociety.org. We have websites like indianordinata.org, and there's a list of ordinata. At least for Kerala, you have Wikipedia, and we have the Facebook and Instagram pages. And get familiarized with ordinates. Go out and start studying them, observing them. This is the best time to observe ordinates, at least in the Western Ghats, because it's peak summer and you'll get rains soon, and most of the ordinates adults have emerged from the larvae. You can see once it starts raining, you can find them in abundance in any freshwater body. So you need to observe them, document, and inspire. So I use iNaturalist, on a regular basis. At least I try to use iNaturalist. So this is a free. I'm pretty sure most of you would be knowing about iNaturalist. Most of you would be already be having it in your phones. But I'll tell you why it is very important, because new species of dragonflies have been described using iNaturalist. And over a period of time, we'll be able to know the seasonality of ordinates when they are seen as larvae, when they are seen as adults, what is their flight period. All these things can be derived later on if you keep on giving data to iNaturalist. So this is one of my earliest observations in iNaturalist. It was back in 2018. So this was Cyclocompus flavo and lattice. This species was unknown back then, but then later on in 2019, it was described as Cyclocompus flavo and lattice. But back then, I did not know what species this was. Perhaps the authors of the species, they were able to understand what the species was, which was undescribed, and they were able to go and collect the species and describe them. So this is another reason why you should keep on doing iNaturalist. And there is a species known as Hemicotylia asiatica. So it is known as the Indian emerald. So it was considered to be lost for 80 years, but it was citizen scientists who found it, when we are doing a survey in the Periyar Tiger Reserve after 80 years. It's a very unique dragonfly. And we thought that the species breeds, it's a high elevation species, breeds in high elevation pools and streams. But very recently, there is a citizen scientist called Ryzen who had documented the species emerging from its well. In Thrissur district, there is plains, so it is very close to the sea level. So initially, even our great ornithologist Fraser had said that this is a high altitude species which breeds in, the ponds and streams found in higher altitudes. But the species was seen emerging from the lateritic well by Raisen Tumpur, and many of the citizen scientists had also gotten involved. They had also observed this species emerging from the the wells and lakes in the plains. So we were able to publish this paper. So now we think that the species is showing an elevational migration. Maybe the species, some of the individuals at least, they are coming to the plains from the higher altitudes during the rainy season, and they're breeding here in the wells. Maybe you should just go out and check your wells. If you have wells at home, you should check what species are breeding there. So you may also be able to make such discoveries. Uh, by now, I hope that you have come to know why ordinates are important, why we need to conserve them, why, despite being very small organisms, they are very important in the ecosystem. We need effective laws for the conservation of wetlands, because whatever wetlands we are having, we are losing them. Even new species are being described as wetlands. Even most of the wetlands have been taken over for paddy cultivation, but still they are able to support a lot of species, including ordinate species. So we need to conserve them. So we have very strong laws like the Pollution Acts and Wildlife Protection Act. We need to implement them strongly, and we need to reduce the quantity and the quality, the potency of the agrochemicals that we are using in our wetlands, because we need to conserve the species. And you need to set apart our egos, and we need to collaborate. That is how I was able to take my research forward. I need to spread the word. I have spoken at various venues. I go wherever I am called. I talk about ordinates, and I also collaborate with a lot of researchers. At the center of the slide, you can see Subin and Siki. They were my field assistants. I wouldn't have been able to complete my PhD if not for them. And on the right-hand corner, you can see Dr. Prasad Savan. He's a medical doctor by profession, but he's very much into ornaments. So we have been lucky enough to describe a lot of species. So my advice is to collaborate and spread the word, discuss as much as possible. There are people like me who are willing to advise you, help you in any way possible. So I'm not, prolonging my talk much because, time almost, and I think we'll have a lot of things to discuss. So I thank all these people and organizations, and I thank you for attending my talk. Now I'm open for discussion. Okay, so I can already see a pop-up message. How is a species? How are we able to identify species with XUV? So in the case of in the Indian scenario, we have very basic keys available. At least till family, it is very easy to identify the species. The keys are available in books like Dragonflies of India by Dr. Subramanian K of ZSI. So at least the family level keys are available. And I collaborated with the researcher Prosenjit Don, who studies ordinate larvae. He is from West Bengal. So I had actually traveled to West Bengal. I had sat with him and I learned the species. That's how I was able to. So we don't have a publication yet. But as I told you, in places like the Great Britain, the United Kingdom, and other European countries, they have books that actually describe the XUVA of all the species. So for them it is easy, but for us, we are still describing new ordinate species. So we have not made a complete key for ordinate larvae. So that is another area that needs more exploration. Okay, so somebody else has asked what is the role of ordinates in the rice fields. Okay, so I have talked to farmers when I go to in the field to collect ordnance in the field, the paddy fields. Uh, the farmers, usually the older farmers, they stop me, they prevent me. They started asking me, why are you catching ordnance? They are very important for us because they know that they feed on pests. Okay, the species like small damsel flies, there are cereagrown species which prey on pests of paddy, like the stem borer, and there are some moths that parasitize the rice plant. So these species are preyed upon by ordinates, and the ordinates are very effective bioindicators, and as well as they are biopest controllers. So the older farmers know that, but I'm not sure if the newer generation know about the pest control service done by the ordinates. Okay, somebody else has asked which institutes in India focus on insect research, especially on ordinates. So in my slide, I had shown you there is a Chadar Ullu lab in MIT Pune, Chadar Ullu lab. It is led by Dr. Pankaj Kopade. There is another lab, the Biodiversity Lab in National Center for Biological Sciences, NCBS. The lab is led by Dr. Krishna Kunde. These are the two labs that I know of that focus on ordinatology. Sadly, there aren't many people who focus on automates, but the things are slowly changing now because of the collaborations. So these are the two places, especially the NCBS, I would recommend. The Biodiversity Lab of Dr. Krishna Kunde has started, they had started their work on butterflies earlier, but now they're focusing on automates as well. So that is a very good place to intern. That's a good place to do your master's or do your PhD. So how can we create a habitat in our house surroundings? Maybe you can, you don't need to create a habitat. Maybe you can dig a small pond or something, or even if you keep a cement tank and you have some aquatic vegetation nearby inside, and of course near it, that will be good habitat for ordinates. Otherwise, if you are able to dig a small pond, a natural pond, that will be very good for inviting ordinates. But you need a source population. If there is habitat for ordinates around where you are staying, and if they are able to disperse and come to the new habitat that you are creating, that will be better. What are the requirements to conduct a larval study of ordinates? Yeah, so I will share it you in detail if you get in touch with me. I just give my personal number here. I don't mind like helping all of you. It's my personal number. I'm available on WhatsApp. Yeah, but the basic requirement is that you need a net, that is a V-shaped insect aquatic net that you need for collecting larvae, and you may need to rear them indoors. So I've done all this work. So if you want to know that in detail, you can definitely contact me personally. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Please do ask. You can unmute and ask.
Hello, sir. So, a month ago, I was at a wetland in the outskirts of my hometown. So, there was a particular patch, and there were a lot of Neurothemistulia, which is pied paddy skimmers. So, at least 25 to 30 were there on a particular patch, and that area had a lot of reeds and some stagnant water with a lot of algae, and it was quite polluted as well, but it seemed that they were like thriving. A lot of them were
Yeah.
there. So have they started adapting in the polluted habitat?
There are okay. So when we say that ordinates are indicators of ecosystem health, it does not mean that all the ordinates require a very clean, unpolluted waters for breeding or as their habitat. So there are species which are adaptable. There are general species which are able to thrive in almost any kind of water body despite it being polluted. One example would be Brachythemis contaminata. Even this species that you mentioned, Neurothemis tulia, the pied paddy skimmer, what you call in Malayalam as Swamitumbi, the black and white dragonfly, small dragonfly, seen in almost all paddy fields and ponds. It is a very adaptable species. So it's not that it has adapted now. Maybe it was even earlier. It was adapted to pollution, because pollution is a very relative term. When we say pollution, the picture that comes to our mind is pollution due to anthropogenic causes, mostly due to chemicals like pesticides and insecticides. That is not the only thing that causes pollution. Pollution is anything that makes the water quality bad. So it can be a depletion of oxygen. It can be high conductivity. There will be a lot of ions, charged particles. If a lot of charged particles are present, that is also polluted. So that need not be because of humans, right? So it can happen because of various reasons, like other natural phenomena, like maybe if there is high rainfall, the pH of a water body, small water body, can actually get reduced. That is, it will become acidic. That is also possible. That is also in terms of us, in terms of humans, it is pollution. Because pH, if it goes below 5, many species will not be able to survive, but some of them may be able to survive. So we can say that such species are adapted naturally. So this is, I've also observed that Neurothemis tulia is a very adaptable species. So that could be the reason why it is seen in abundance. And if you have seen a lot of algae growing, I've also, that is also one of the conclusions of my PhD study. Species such as maybe if you see a lot of algae growing, maybe that is nutrient-rich water. So there's a lot of nitrate and phosphate, maybe because of fertilizers, maybe because of natural fertilization, or maybe because of the fertilizers that are applied by the farmers. Anyway, if the nutrients are available, then the algae will grow, and then there will be other aquatic organisms as well. Maybe that is why the larvae of ordinates are also able to thrive there. Okay, so it's not that if it is eutrophic that no organism will be able to survive there. But sometimes the oxygen level becomes very depleted. If that happens, if there is no mixing of water, if the water is stagnant and there is no mixing of water, then because of the high nutrient input, the oxygen level will come down because of all the organisms consuming oxygen. But then if that is not the case, if there is mixing of water happening, then a lot of general species like the Neurothemis will be able to survive. I hope I have cleared your doubt.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, somebody has asked, is alternate migration or seasonal based for reproduction or due to environmental degradation? Okay, so there are a lot of alternates that migrate, but we have studied the migration of this particular species called the globe skimmer or the Pendula flavescens because they migrate in great numbers. Okay, so if you are seeing thousands of dragonflies flying in the same direction, we can say it's migrating. But there are other ordinates like small damselflies also migrate. So sometimes it's part of dispersal. As I told you, they need to disperse to new habitats because as in the general stage they're very vulnerable. It's a predation. So they just fly away from the natal water body. So that is one thing. And usually, I think this is the migration of species such as Pentella is based on the availability of habitats. So if you take a pond, there will be hundreds of species breeding in a pond, right, including ordinates. So it's the competition level is very high. But if you take a puddle that is formed after the rainy season or just after the rains have started, uh, there won't be a lot of species adapted to that particular habitat because it lasts, then the water lasts only for a few months maximum. So maybe the species got adapted, the Pentella flavescens got adapted to it, and wherever this water body, this small particle of water, this particular type of water body is available, it just started migrating. That is one theory. So it can be called as a rain chaser. So wherever there is rain, monsoon rain, the species, the Pentella flavescens will just keep migrating. And it is passive migration. It is not active migration like it happens in birds, because birds make use of their own energy to migrate. But in the case of ordinates, especially Pentella flavescens, they make use of the winds to migrate. So they just fly up and lose themselves in the wind, and it's actually the monsoon winds that take them to various locations on the globe. Uh, so Amrita has asked, is there any application level studies on ordinates rather than taxonomy? Yeah. So as I told you, most of the studies in India have focused on taxonomy, because you can't blame them, because even more species are still being described. So that is a very important thing to do. But behavior-wise or ecology-wise, the studies are very less. There are studies, of course, there are behavioral studies are still lacking, but ecological studies, yes, there are ecological studies. Scientists, including scientists from Sadhurulu Lab, have looked at how the species diversity changes according to urbanization gradient. And I have studied the ecology of a certain species called Disperneura apicalis, and I've tried to study the ecology of ordinate larvae in the cold wetlands of Kerala. So there are some studies happening, but we don't have much studies. So yeah, I mean, a lot of things are yet to be discovered. We don't know the larval stages of many species yet. We don't know the flight season of many species yet. So we don't know why certain species migrate while some others don't. So a lot of questions are still being asked. They need to be answered. So there is scope for a lot of research. How long the lifespan of ordinates? Well, it changes from species to species. If you For the species that are seen around us, especially in the habitats like ponds and freshwater bodies like wetlands, they'll have multiple life cycle even in a year. So the species will come and lay eggs, larva will develop, and adult will emerge. It will again lay eggs. So like that, 2 to 3 times it will happen in a year. So it will have multiple generations in a single year. So an average lifespan of an adult will be like 2 to 3 months, but as larvae, it will be like 4 to 5 months. It will be underwater. So are there any cryptic dragonflies in Western Ghats? Okay, so okay, I think you meant by cryptic species. So cryptic species are species which cannot be identified morphologically. At least it's not easy to identify the morphologically. Morphologically, they'll be very similar. So by external features, it's very hard to identify them. But at the molecular level, if you look at their genes, they're very divergent. They can be considered as separate species. So yeah, there are species such as I told you, there is this Protosticta species. So they can be considered cryptic species because externally they are very similar. Of course, there are some morphological differences which are very small, very subtle differences, but genetically they're very different. So they can be the Protosticta species, that is red-tailed damselflies or shadow damsel that we see in the Western Ghats, can be considered as cryptic species. Okay, somebody's asking, Giri is asking if ordinates can thrive in brackish water environment. So the salinity tolerance of species also changes according to the species in ordinates. It varies from species to species, but we do have certain species called Macrodiplex. One is example. It is called the coastal glider. It is called coastal glider because it is able to thrive in such brackish environments. So there are reports of this from Alappuzha, Edupunna regions also. because they thrive. Their larvae are able to develop even in brackish water environments. Otherwise, there are species like a mangrove skimmer that is seen in Singapore. There are certain species that are able to tolerate salinity, but in general, they are not able to thrive in saline waters. They require fresh water for their life cycle, completing their life cycle. So yeah, thank you for the discussion. I'm very glad that you guys. I'm hoping that you enjoyed it. That's why there were a lot of questions, and I'm happy to answer them. And if there are any more questions, you can ask them right away, either in the message or you can just unmute and ask. I recommend that you make the effort and read the books written by Philip S. Corbett, Biology of Dragonflies. There are two versions, 1962 and 1999 version. At least the 1962 version is available online for free. The PDF is available for free. You need to download and read them. It's a very interesting read also. It's not a very boring book. It's a very interesting read, and you'll get a general idea about the behavior and ecology of automates.
Are there any more questions, or we can conclude the session?
Yeah, there are more questions. You can definitely reach out to me on my WhatsApp number. You can chat. You can discuss. I'm very happy to engage myself with people interested in automates. So that's not an issue. If there are no more questions now, we can conclude for the evening, I guess.
Okay, assuming there are no more questions. First of all, we extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Vivek Chandran for delivering such an insightful and engaging session on orderings, the overall Sentinels of Freshwater health. Today's talk gave us a deeper understanding of the ecological importance of orderings and how these remarkable organisms serve as a valuable indicators of freshwater ecosystem health. The session truly helped us appreciate the role of dragonflies and damselflies in biodiversity monitoring and conservation. We also sincerely thank everyone who joined us this evening and actively participated in this session. Your enthusiasm, curiosity, and support continues to make Biorex a vibrant and growing scientific community. Before we conclude, here's a quick glimpse of what's coming up next. Tomorrow, we have another exciting Biorex Biotech session titled Farming Beyond Season Biological Optimization in Controlled Environment Agriculture. The session will be presented by Parvati Chandra Prasad, a second year BSc Botany student from Maharajas College, Ernakulam. This talk promises to explore how biological principles and modern agricultural techniques can help optimizing farming in controlled environments beyond seasonal limitations. The session will be held tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. via Google Meet, and the link will be shared in the Biorix group. I would also like to remind everyone that applications are open for students who wish to be speakers for upcoming Biorix Biotech sessions. If you are passionate about any topic in life science and would like to share your ideas, insights, or research, this is a wonderful platform for you to present and inspire others. In addition, we are now inviting interested students to join the Biotics core team. We love to have you as a part of our team. With that, we officially conclude today's session. Thank you all for being a part of this discussion. See you tomorrow in the next Bioris session. Thank you.
Thank you, and all the best for all your future activities, Biorix. Bye.